Hi again guys, and welcome to a kind of video which I've literally never done here on the channel. It's ironically the kind of video that most Gran Turismo YouTubers do, and it's one of the only types of video that I don't do, because most of my stuff is tunes, reviews, the more behind the scenes stuff, whereas actual commentary and online racing and being competitive with other drivers, it's just not usually my thing. Not that I can't be competitive, it's just not really my preferred style. So if this video is not particularly well received or popular, then it doesn't really matter too much. It can just be a one-off, something that we tried, and if you do like it, maybe I could bring it back occasionally again. Because I'm a very busy person on YouTube, and of course I don't get the chance to race online as much as those drivers who pretty much put out only that kind of content, so this will be probably more of a rarity for me anyway. But the significance of this video is I wanted to do a quick rundown of my actual legitimate very first race online in GT Sport. Because, for those who don't know, of course, for a long time in Gran Turismo Sport, I didn't even have PS Plus. I would just use all of the stuff that you didn't need that for, which is essentially everything but online racing. And then I finally got PS Plus a while back. I've done a number of online lobbies. So, of course, I'd done those before, but this was my first sport mode event, which is a completely different playing field, especially when all of the previous racing that I'd done had been pretty much just on Special Stage Route X, because if I race online, it's pretty much just to meet people and to just have some fun, and Route X does that for me. However, this, as I said, is a totally different ball game. You've got a different level of skill, different tracks, of course BOP is applied, the vehicle tuning options are no way near what they are in regular lobbies, so how would that turn out? Well, of course, I'm not being disingenuous and featuring some amazing first place result, because spoiler alert, I did not win the race, but I think that sometimes interesting races can be races where you don't necessarily win, especially when it's something like Le Mans, of course, a longer event. This was an 18-minute race, which I've probably pretty heavily edited down, depending on how long this video is, just to give you basically the highlights of the match, my thoughts on the sport experience, maybe some of the negatives that I hear other people talking about a lot, that I've now experienced myself, such as the sportsmanship rating, and we'll get to that in due time, but basically an overview of what my experience was. So the track was, as you could see, Le Mans. It was a daily event, and I chose the Hyundai N2025. It was a Group 1 match, as you could kind of tell, and I tested a couple of different ones in practicing, but I opted for the Hyundai because of three reasons. One, I like the underdog, and there was nobody else really giving that car any love. Two, it's got my channel livery, and of course I'm going to use that. And three, it actually has a top speed advantage over all of the other cars on the grid. Even with balance of performance, I was pulling 216 miles per hour in this thing, which is a good 5 to 10 miles per hour more than all of the others, so that's something that you might want to bear in mind yourself. But the payoff is the balance of performance very heavily affected the weight. It was almost 1,000 kilos. So yes, it was faster on the straights, but the corners, maybe not so much, and I could definitely feel that in qualifying. I qualified 6th on the grid out of the, I think it was 20 cars that were in. There were a couple of DNFs, ultimately I think 16 cars actually finished. So what were the highlights? Well, it took me 4.5 minutes to get to first place, which I was pretty happy about. Of course, I didn't really notice that in the race itself because you just focused on driving, but that was not only due to the, of course, driving that I did, but thanks to the top speed advantage of the car. So all credit to the car, as far as I'm concerned, because, of course, as I've said before, I'm much more of a fan of the engineering of the vehicle than I am of the driver, even when it comes to myself. So, 4.5 minutes, got into the lead, as you'll see here in the vid. Then, as far as the rest of the race, I made two big mistakes that cost me the win, ultimately. And of course, there are other variables that could have always happened, but in this particular race, the first mistake, which I'll probably edit and cut to, was around the 6-minute mark when I made a pretty rookie mistake of just entering the corner. I can't recall the name of this corner on Le Mans. I think it's called something like Arnage or something like that, but I entered the corner way too fast and just went straight off. The car started to shimmy from side to side, lost control, and that single-handedly cost me a lot of positions. It went from first, within a couple of corners, all the way down to 7th. So once I was in 7th, I then of course had to claw my way back up through the grid. if possible. So then at the 7-minute 34 mark or thereabouts, I got back up to 6th, had a nice little battle with the Sauber C9, ultimately got the best out of him on a corner exit rather than mid-corner, and that was, as you can see, pretty close to the start of the lap. Then moved up to 5th around the 8:23 minute mark, and that was against a Peugeot 908. And that Peugeot, incidentally, looks like he made kind of a mistake, lost a bit of time himself. That cost him that position, and I moved up. Then I got 4th and 3rd back, thanks to a Porsche 919 and a Toyota TS50, both making essentially the exact same mistake that I did on that corner. Looks like they had way too high entry speed, maybe even bounced off of each other, clawing for the lead, and both went straight off into the sand. So that was a very good corner for me to make up time. As I said, got back up into 3rd thanks to that. Then at the 10-minute 30 mark or thereabouts, I needed to pit in to refill the fuel, of course, and to change the tyres, but especially the fuel, and I was making good time. I can't recall exactly how far behind the lead car I was at that point, but you'll see it on screen. It was probably something like, I think, 6 or 7 seconds or thereabouts. Then came my biggest mistake. Spinning out wasn't too bad, because as you can see from the time, I was actually gaining on the leader again. And were the race longer, and had I not made this next mistake, I would have probably been okay. But I made a rookie mistake, I had a brain fart, and I've put way too much fuel in the car. I thought I needed more than I actually did. I started to second guess myself, and I didn't want to leave the pit, of course, with too little, so the safe way is to just fill up the car. So that's exactly what I did. Unfortunately, that wasted a ton of time, and I didn't realise I'd made such a big mistake until I exited the pit. And as you can see, the time jumped to like 42 seconds behind the lead car, which killed my chances at a win. I knew that that pretty much killed my chances, but at the time, when I was leaving the pit, I thought that I was okay. And the reason why I thought I was okay is because I thought that that 42-second lead was coming from a car that simply hadn't pitted in, but I don't think that was the case, unless of course the fuel just lasted longer for him in his vehicle and I just miscalculated, which is of course possible because I believe the Peugeot actually won the race. That would make sense being a diesel, but I don't know how accurate the fuel economy is in sport mode. As I said, this was my first race. So then I started clawing my way back up the grid. And as I said, I didn't actually win, but as far as moving back up again, I was like 42 seconds behind at the 11.5 minute mark in 10th place. That's where I dropped to. Then at 14 minutes 22 or thereabouts, managed to jump up thanks to a DNF, which doesn't feel that fulfilling, but hey, it's better than 10th. So that was a bump up into 9th place. Then at about 17 minutes 8 seconds, I jumped up into 8th place by simply overtaking the Audi R18, thanks to, again, that sheer top speed and top end acceleration of the Hyundai. Then at the 17:23 minute mark, I jumped to 7th place with kind of a strange reset that seemed to happen on the track. It looked like that same Audi, so I'm not sure what happened there, but whatever it was, one of the competitors reset to the track, and I jumped from, as I said, 8th to 7th, and ultimately that was where I finished. I finished in 7th place, 37 seconds behind the lead car, but again, I didn't feel too bad about that because the mistakes that were made were just logical mistakes. The pit lane stuff, it was not like somebody had rammed me or anything, it was just a genuine brain fart that I'd had. Going off on the corner is something which happens plenty of times, so I didn't beat myself up over that, especially when I was gaining time again, and ultimately I did actually make up 5 seconds on the lead car anyway, from when I came out of the pits at 42 seconds behind, back up to 37 seconds, so as I said again, if I'd have got that pit right, I would have probably been a lot closer than that. Maybe not a victory, but certainly a lot closer to the lead car. So ultimately that was it for the highlights of my very first sport mode race. Pretty eventful one, and I did actually really enjoy it. My overall thoughts as far as the experience of doing it, playing as I am on a controller with an automatic gearbox, I know, very rookie stuff, that's just what I prefer. And yes, I do drive in real life, have a license, etc. I just don't like steering wheels in games, just doesn't do it for me. But as far as the experience went, I can certainly see the issues that people have with the sportsmanship rating, for instance. Overall though, I did enjoy the experience. I will probably do it again, but as I said, it's not really my forte of racing online all the time, so I can't promise that if this is a well-received video when the next one will be, especially when of course most of these kind of videos on the channel tend to be focusing on you guys instead of me, the community spotlight stuff. So overall, that's it for my highlights. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Slap your thoughts down below if you'd like to see more like this on the channel, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.